joined today from the Fitchburg Finance Department. It's your Finance Director, Misty Dodge. Misty, welcome back to the show. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming back. For folks joining us on this specific interview, we're going to be talking about the tax bill breakdown. This is going to be for the Town of Madison portion. Town of Madison was just annexed by both City of Fitchburg and by Madison. We're going to be talking, obviously, about our new residents here in the City of Fitchburg. But your tax bill, compared to the residents of Fitchburg prior to this year, are going to look a little bit different. You're going to talk about that in this interview, and we're going to break down the tax bill. So first and foremost, Misty, explain just briefly here, what is the difference between, first off, the City of Fitchburg's tax bill, quote unquote, and the Town of Madison's tax bill. And then, I mean, we could talk about the other literal differences later, but let's start there.
Yeah, so there are kind of two batches of tax bills that were issued this year, and that's because of the timing of the annexation or the absorption of the Town of Madison. So when you get your tax bill here in December of 2022, it's based off of property that was in place as of 1/1/22, January 1st. So back in January 1st of 22, the Town of Madison still existed, even though they don't now. So tax bill wise, it all goes back. It's very similar to as though the town was here, even though it's technically a Fitchburg bill at this point. So you'll see it does say City of Fitchburg here on the top. In the jurisdictions, it says City of Fitchburg. But if you go to this make check payable to, that will say that it was annexed 2022 down here. And then also the bill numbers start with a different number. So that's just our way to keep track of, which ones were Fitchburg as of 1/1 and which ones were town as of 1/1, all of which are now Fitchburg residents.
All right. Well, let's jump into the tax bill, and you'll do good at pointing things out here that stand out. That might be some changes even compared to before what Town Madison was doing to what the City of Fitchburg is doing. And great job with your team getting this all together again this year. We start with that bill number 1 there. You said it is unique, might not match other city numbers, but this number is important because...
Yeah, so this is the number that references your specific bill. So when you're making payment, especially if it's by check, if you could reference that bill number, it's just helpful for us to make sure that we're applying the payment to the correct parcel. And so yes, it will look a little bit different than, say, the other Fitchburg properties. And next year, your tax bill will have a number that's using more of the Fitchburg numbers patterns. Right now, this is a Town of Madison pattern bill number.
Fantastic. Moving down to box 2-3, we've got information on the assessed value. So we're talking about assessments here. Again, if you could point out some differences too, what has happened and what will be moving forward would be helpful as well.
Yeah, so again, this is all based off of property as of 1/1/22. So these assessed values and some of the value information all came from the town. So the town's assessor would have made the determinations on these values and simply transferred that information over to us. So on this particular bill, the assessed value is $107,500. And then box number 3 is the assessment ratio. So the assessment ratio for the town portion, that is now Fitchburg, is about 95%. So what that means is when you take the assessed value and apply the ratio, your estimated fair market value for this property is the $113,700. So the assessor went out specifically to look at what your particular property is. That's how they determine the assessed value. The ratio is determined by the state. They look at sales and statistics across the entire jurisdiction to figure out that ratio. And then we simply apply that to get that estimated fair market value. So those two pieces of information are really just for your information. It's that assessed value that's what calculates the tax bill.
And then moving over to the net assessed value rate in box number 5, there's a little bit of information there that's interesting.
Yeah, so this is the rate. So people call it a tax rate. Sometimes they'll call it a mill rate. The rate for all bills is calculated based on how much money we need to collect from everybody to pay for the budgets. In the Town of Madison, that is now Fitchburg, that rate is $20.03 per $1,000 of assessed value. So to get to the overall tax bill amount, you would take the assessed value in box 2, you'd multiply it by box 5, and then you get this down here as the total tax responsibility before credits, before assessments, of what this property is responsible for.
And you guys work really hard during the budget time. I was putting all that together. So it's a very interesting process there. And for folks watching, you can watch that play out here on Fact TV as well as the budgets are put together each and every year. Moving into box number 6, an important box here. It actually breaks down where the portions of the tax bill come from. Very important to understand.
Yeah, and so one important thing to keep in mind is that even though the city of Fitchburg is mailing these bills and calculating these bills and collecting these bills, it's actually for money that we collect for other jurisdictions as well in order to provide those services. So the property tax bill includes, yes, the city of Fitchburg's portion of our budget, but also Dane County, this Madison School District, and Madison Tech College. All 4 of those jurisdictions are included on this tax bill. Now over in that box 6 on the right, the percent tax change, this is going to look fairly unusual for town parcels this year. And again, is part of this transition from becoming a town into a city. So first, I'll point out that I like this box because it shows you by each jurisdiction how much your particular bill is changing. But the weird thing for this year is you'll notice the city of Fitchburg line is blank. The reason for that is because that percent increase is more than 100%. Now, normally these situations are very isolated. It would be for new construction or something really significant that happened. You know, if you had a vacant property and now you have a home on it, obviously that increase could be 100% or more. This year, because of the transition from the town to the city, it's fairly common for the local portion to be more than 100%. And that's because last year's tax bill, when it was still the town, was artificially lowered, and they used some fund balance or their cash on hand in order to say that they didn't have to collect as much in taxes to pay for their services. So it's hard for town tax bills to compare last year to this year. It would be better to compare to 2 years ago. So just kind of generalities, you know, if a property paid taxes at a dollar amount 2 years ago, last year the town artificially dropped it to about half by using that cash instead of collecting additional taxes. And now we need to bring it back up to where it would have been normally, or at least in that same ballpark.
Yeah, and there is. Whoops, sorry, go ahead. My apologies.
The other thing to keep in mind is generally town taxes are lower than city taxes. You know, city services are a higher level of service, including our library and our senior center and our park system. And so they cost more in order to provide all of those additional services. So it's not uncommon for there to be a tax increase from a town to a city.
Yeah, this doesn't happen every day, first off. I mean, the very unique situation here. And what I was going to comment is say we do have a insert that was included in your tax bill that actually spends some time talking about what you just talked about, the differences between municipality or city village, but also that fund balance piece, and looking back a couple of years instead of just 1 year to make that understanding. We'll look at that at a later interview, but I did want to point that out as long as we're talking about that. All right, Misty, moving into box 7 and 8, what are we looking at?
So these are 2 credits that can be applied to your tax bill, which reduce the amount that you have to pay. First is the first dollar credit. This one is automatic. So as long as your property has improvements on it or has, you know, something built on it, not just land, you should see this first dollar credit automatic. The one to watch for, though, is the lottery credit. And I pulled this bill specifically because it doesn't have the lottery credit, even though it is a residential property. The lottery credit is available if this property was your primary residence as of the first of the year. So if as of 1/1/22, the person that owns this property is living in this property as their primary residence, they could fill out a really simple form, provide that to the city of Fitchburg, and we can get them their credit. And it's in the $300 ballpark. So it's a pretty significant dollar amount. And we really want to make sure people are watching for that if they're eligible. Make sure you're able to get that credit.
Awesome. Moving on to box number 9, and the net property tax and other special charges will be in this section.
So this particular one just includes the sewer service. Now for the town, one of the other differences between the town and the city is how they bill for utilities. So your water utility is going to be the same. That was always a monthly bill from the city of Madison. That will continue to be a monthly bill from the city of Madison. The difference though is for sewer and stormwater. The town used to include that full charge here as a special charge on your tax bill. This bill will still include a charge because it's from January 1 until when the town was absorbed at the end of October. So this charge will still be here for this year, should not be there for next year. Instead, how the city of Fitchburg does our sewer and stormwater utility is we send out quarterly bills. So you'll get a separate bill from Fitchburg Utilities that includes those two pieces on it. And so you will not see it on your tax bill going forward. The one thing that you will see here though, and it's not on this particular bill because I believe this is a condo, is a garbage charge. So if you are a single home or a duplex, you have to pay a garbage charge, which is the fee that we remit then onto Pelletieri, who does all of our garbage collection, and we collect that as a separate charge on the tax bill.
All right. Yeah, we'll point those out again next year as we look at these bills again, but good information there, Misty. Turning our attention to box 10 and 11 on making those payments.
Yeah, so any payments that you want to make between now and January 31st would come to the city of Fitchburg. And again, we did include this Annex 2022 here. You don't have to actually include that on your check. It was just a way for us to help distinguish what were prior town properties. So if you make a payment either in full or the first installment, those payments would come to us. Any payments after January 31st will end up going to the county instead. And I believe that's the same as how the town handled it. It's just instead of sending it to the town, send it over to the city.
All right, and then scooting down here to a box 12 and talking a little bit about the tax jurisdiction, and I still can't say it just right, but tell us what this area is.
Yeah, I love this part of the bill. It was added just a few years ago. What this shows you is for any overlying jurisdiction that has a referendum that is non-recurring, it shows up here on this part of the bill. So right now, all of the school districts in Fitchburg and all prior town residents are all in the Madison school district. Madison does have one current non-recurring referendum. This referendum ends in 2043, as you can see from this information, and it also gives you how much this particular tax bill is paying towards that referendum. So this tax bill is paying $58 simply because of that referendum that was approved. One other thing I like to point out though is that this is just non-recurring referendums or ones that will end at some point in the future. So if Madison School District has one for say staffing or something that will continue in the future, doesn't have an end date, that won't show up here. This is just for the ones that will end at some point.
Yeah, we have that in some of our other school districts in Fitchburg, so important to point out for sure. Finally, box 13, check for billing address change. Tell us about this important box.
So the city can't change the owner or the property address itself. That has to go through the Register of Deeds. But if you do have a billing address change, you want us to mail your tax bill somewhere else, that we can do. So just check this box, write down what the new address would be, and we will make that update. So this is generally for people that either, winter somewhere else, somewhere warm, that wants their tax bill to go somewhere else, even though the property is in Fitchburg. That's how we can make sure it gets to the right spot.
All right, Misty, I mentioned before that there was an insert included with the tax bill, but definitely we do want to share too. There's a lot of places for you to ask questions, learn more about how the city of Fitchburg handles the tax bills, but more importantly, to answer your questions. Where can folks find those, find that information?
Yeah, the city website is a great resource. It has a lot of information out there about the tax collection process in particular. We go to the finance department, and then there's a tax and credit information section that'll include links to that lottery credit form I was talking about. It'll include links to the tax insert. There's also some frequently asked questions out there. Then also a link to Dane County's frequently asked questions, which is also great information. The other thing about the tax insert for previously town properties, and big box at the bottom of that first page does include the link to the separate web page just for town absorption information. That includes more than just finance. So if you have questions about any department or any service that the city of Fitchburg has, that would be a great resource for you as well. And then in the bottom right corner, right above that box, we talk about those utility billing changes there as well. So I know I talked about them a little bit during this segment, but if you have more questions, there's a link and then also some brief description there, trying to get out as much information as we can for people and help answer those questions.